May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable unto you, O Lord Christ. Well, today we have a story in the Gospel of a wedding. If you're familiar with the marriage service of the Episcopal Church, you know that this is referenced in that as a sign that Jesus approved of the institution of marriage. But that's probably not the main point of the gospel, probably not the reason that John tells the story. John is concerned about signs, evidences that Jesus is the fulfillment of prophecy. But we also can read this as in the light of the reading from Paul's letter to Corinthians about gifts of the Spirit used for the common good. It's interesting coincidence that I'm preaching on this on a day that I'm celebrating the Eucharist at home, because I don't have the church hardware here. So I have gathered together some of our best crystal and china, like the hosts of the wedding would have done. This isn't what you do when someone in your family is getting married, is you seek to put your best for the guests, whatever that is, whether it was pottery or silver, or we don't know what the table looked like. But we know that the host wanted to show hospitality to the guests. And so when the wine ran out, that would be a source of shame, of embarrassment, a breach of hospitality. And Jesus's mother, Mary, notices and says to Jesus, "They have no wine." I imagine she said this sort of under her breath, not wanting to shame the host publicly, but they have no wine. And Jesus's response is one that, well, in the translation we read, he says, "Woman, what is that to you or to me?" This sounds sort of rude. Another translation, David Bentley Hart, says that is a little misleading, that the Greek word, although it means woman, it specifically a married mother woman as distinct from an unmarried virginal woman, it doesn't have the connotation of rudeness that woman as a term of address does in English. He translates Jesus's words as, "What, madam, is this to me and you?" I gather that the word in Greek is sort of similar to the Spanish word señora, which can be used as a term of polite address, but also means woman. La señora, the woman. In any case, Jesus's response, if not rude, is certainly distancing. It's not, "Oh, let me do something about this." It's, why is this something that is my business? Why is this something that you and I should be concerned about? I submit that this is actually a healthy first response to seeing a problem. We all know people who, whatever the problem, are very quick to rush in and try to take it on their shoulders and solve it. In the law, sometimes called officious intermeddlers, people who erect a fence on their neighbor's property without being asked, for example, and then they expect to be repaid for it because there's sort of a human thing to want credit when you have solved someone's problem. Jesus' first response is, how is this something for me? The text doesn't say, but I suspect that there was then a period of time. And that I wonder whether Mary's words sort of stayed with Jesus. If they have no wine, they have no wine. And then Mary tells the servants, do whatever he tells you. It says that this is like one of Jesus's first signs, but he must have done something before to make his mother think that he could do something about this. And in fact, Jesus does turn the water into not just wine, but wonderful wine, excellent wine, better wine than the host could actually afford. This is probably linked to some passages in what we call the Old Testament of how at the end times, when it is made new and God's world is set right, that there will be a flowing abundance of wine. It's also an example of Jesus' quiet using of his gifts to help someone, because he doesn't do this publicly. He doesn't say, oh, I am a miracle worker and I will turn water into wine for you. No, he does it in such a way that only the servants who filled the jars with water and then drew out wine actually knew what had happened. To the rest of the guests and to the steward, it looks like the host has been well prepared, very hospitable. This is actually consistent with the teachings of rabbinic Judaism about how to do favors for others. To do a mitzvah is to not take credit. Jesus was very rabbinic in this sense when he says, do not let your right hand know what your left hand is doing when you are giving charity, because you don't want to diminish the person whom you are helping. How does this connect to the passage on spiritual gifts? Well, Paul says basically everyone has gifts. How do we know when when something is for us to concern ourselves with? They have no wine. These people have not enough food. These people have no house. These kittens have no mama. How is it that we know this is something for me, something for us to concern ourselves with? I suggest, in part, it's what stays with us. When someone points it out, is it something that stays on our heart? Does the Spirit keep nagging us? They have no food. They have no food. In part, it's the discernment of others. Jesus had his mother saying, they have no wine. His mother discerning that this was something that he actually had the gifts to do something about. Tomorrow, the secular world recognizes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a great leader of the civil rights movement. And something I didn't know until I was reading a biography of him is that he actually had to be prodded and persuaded to get involved in the Montgomery bus boycott. That was his first venture into that work. He was the minister of a Baptist church in Montgomery, and his first reaction was, of course, outrage that this woman had been arrested for not giving up her seat to the white man. But also, what is that to me? Why is that something that I should be involved in? I have my church, I have my ministry. There was a friend of his who persuaded him that this was something that he should be involved in. And then it turned out that his gift for rhetoric, this gift of public speaking, was exactly what the African American people of Montgomery needed to bring them together and inspire them to concerted action. So we depend on people around us to have discernment about where our gifts are needed. And we depend on that still small voice of the Spirit within us, nagging us. And then we can check, are we doing this because we think it will aggrandize us? Are we doing this because we are deflecting from some other work that we should be doing? Is this work something for which we truly have the gifts? And is it work that we can do without expecting from others more than they will give? This is all part of the discernment, so that, as Paul says, our gifts are used for the building up of the kingdom and of others. Jesus had extraordinary gifts. The gift of turning water into wine, the gift of multiplying bread and fish so that they fed thousands, the gift of healing people with a word or a touch. And we don't have those gifts, but each of us has some gifts. How do we use those gifts? When is it that we hear someone saying, they have no wine, they have no food, They have no house. And recognize that this is something about which we should concern ourselves.